I know what kind of man you are, Fede Alvarez. Alien Romulus is directed by Fede Alvarez and is the latest film in the Alien series. This time we follow a group of young scavengers who get more than what they bargained for as they come face to face with the terrifying xenomorph life form. Fede Alvarez is a horror director that I find very underappreciated at points. He's only had like two really notable horror movies, those being Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead reboot. The Evil Dead reboot in particular I found to be amazing and I consider to be one of the best horror reboots of all time. Don't Breathe, I haven't seen at all since middle school, so I really don't remember much of that movie, so I don't really know what my thoughts are on it now, but I do remember enjoying it pretty heavily. And so when I heard Fede was attached to an Alien film, I thought that that was perfect. Fede's style blends thrills and action, which I think is something that this series is perfect for. The first Alien movie is this sort of slow burn, thriller, sort of immersive horror film. Aliens goes for a much different approach, going for a much more action-centric focus with sort of horror elements going into it. Although these two movies are very different, I think that they complement each other very well. And that's something that has sort of haunted the Alien series for a long time, is sort of the conflicting styles that both of those movies presented. I have not seen Alien 3, I have not seen Alien Resurrection, and I haven't seen Prometheus in a long time. Prometheus I found really interesting because it introduced a new concept to the Alien series, and that was sort of high concept sci-fi. And although I didn't really enjoy it that much, I thought it was sort of a mixed bag for the most part. I was really excited to see where the series would go in the future. And then we got Alien Covenant, and I'll be honest, I didn't like it. Alien Covenant felt like it was trying to give the audience what we wanted. It was just sort of a slog that sort of tried blending all three styles. And so what does Alien Romulus try to do? Romulus goes for a very similar approach to Alien Covenant, where it sort of tries to blend all three styles, the silent thriller, the action, and the high concept sci-fi, and it blends it all together to give us one new thing. And I think it worked a lot better in this movie. Romulus was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And when you set an expectation like that, it becomes very easy to be disappointed by a movie like that. Sometimes you have a picture in your mind of what you want, and sometimes a movie doesn't give you that, and you're just very disappointed by that. And that's happened a couple times to me in the past. Justice League is one of the biggest examples of that. I was so excited for that movie and was so let down. And in the case of Alien Romulus, I think that this movie delivers on a lot of what I expected of the movie, and it gives me a little bit more in the end. That's not to say that the movie's perfect. There are definitely problems with the movie that I'll get into, but I think for the most part, Alien Romulus definitely lived up to my expectations. It's actually one of my favorites of the year, and that's partially because I do have, one, a bias towards the Alien series, but two, it just scratches a lot of itches in my mind for like the type of horror I like, the type of sci-fi that I like, and it just felt kind of tailored towards me in a way, so that's sort of like my biases. One of the best parts about this movie is its tones, and yes, I say tones plural because there are two very different tones to this movie. The first half of this movie is dead set, hyper-focused on getting you immersed in this world and setting up things that will come back later on in the film. The second half of this movie is focused on the action. It's sort of like how Alien was focused on the silent horror and Aliens was focused on the action. That's sort of what this movie is, but in one. And I thought that that worked very well. Fede Alvarez has been on record saying that this movie takes place between Alien and Aliens, and I think that that's actually kind of perfect, especially with the way that these tones are. It slowly builds towards the action that you eventually get in Aliens, and I think that if you were to watch these three back to back to back, you would actually get a really natural progression of the tones going into Aliens. Like I mentioned, this takes place between the first two Alien movies, and although you don't have to watch those to get into this movie, I think that you are rewarded as a fan going into this. There are a lot of references and homages to those first two movies in this film. They could go over your head, but they're things that you don't necessarily need to enjoy the movie. I don't think that this was a fan servicey sort of Marvel, Deadpool type of approach. I think that this was more of like, this is an extra layer to something that I think is already working. And I think that that was kind of the best balance for fan service to go. And I think Marvel and DC could honestly take notes from this movie on that. That being said, I do think that there is a really big issue that sort of stems from that fan service category, but it revolves around the use of a CGI character. No way around it, it doesn't look good. That gets into one of my big cons with the movie, and that is specifically this character. They are somebody who I assume is somebody else's body with somebody else's face on there. It doesn't look convincing. It looks like a Snapchat filter, like the face swap. It looks like that, and it was really noticeable. This was a really weird approach because this character specifically, I don't think needed to be in this movie. I think this could have been anyone else and it would have been fine. And I know I just went on saying like the fan service was very like was more of like a onion, but this felt like we're throwing away the onion, here's something cool for the people to like look at and point. The character just didn't feel all that necessary. I think that this, like I said, could have been anybody and it would have been a billion times better, especially considering why they CGI'd this character and who it is. It just wasn't a very good approach, and it's one thing that I just really don't like, and it has really kind of terrifying implications for the future of film, and that's just something that really bothered me throughout the whole movie, because this character isn't in one scene. They're in a couple, and they're actually very important to the story at points, and they just kept coming back, and I kept being like, wow, I don't like this at all. Other than that, like a lot of the movie I really liked. Other than like this weird decision with the VFX like CGI character, I think that the VFX overall was really good. In fact, I think technically this movie was very well made, from the production design, the art direction, the score, and the use of sound, the special effects that were practical. I think going for a practical approach was the better approach to go for Romulus, and I think that it added just a really nice gritty feel to the movie altogether. One thing I really want to highlight though is the production design. The ship that they're on just felt so lived in. There were a lot of little details in there that were just really cool, and it felt just so grounded and real in a way that like it just wasn't a set. This felt like they were actually on a spaceship that has this dark history to it, and I thought that that was just so dope that they were able to do that. One thing that was sort of a divisive factor going into the movie was the cast. For some reason, a lot of people were turned off by the fact that the cast would be younger. I don't know why, but I thought that they did pretty good. The main two characters, Rain and Andy, were really dope. They really carried a lot of this movie, mainly because the rest of the supporting cast are horror movie characters, in that we sort of know bad things are going to happen to them or they're just gonna die, and they're not really developed all that well because of that purpose. Though I do think Isabella Merced's character was a standout because she had a really interesting storyline and plot thread that played a huge role in the end of the film. I wish she got more development. I wish everyone else got more development, but I think that for the most part they do really good performances. I think that I liked following this crew, and I wish that I got to know them a little bit more before they met their fates. The story itself was pretty basic, and that's sort of a good thing here. This movie felt like a back to basics for the Alien series. I mentioned at the beginning that this is a blend of all the Alien tones all together, and I think that that was sort of the best thing that this movie could have done, was staying with a simple story of just people trying to survive, but having all of these different tones sort of be introduced throughout. You do get high concept horror towards the end, and I think that that was a sort of segment of the film that stood out a lot to me. I think that that was the best part of the film, was like that last 20 minutes, which sounds crazy, but I did enjoy all the movie going up to it. It's just the last 20 minutes went so crazy, and it was so Fede Alvarez, like it was crazy. It was a really awesome sequence, and it was a really strong way to end the movie. Yeah, Alien Romulus was just a really nice ride from start to finish. There are a couple sequences in this movie, notably one that has to do with zero gravity, that is just really cool. There are a lot of like set pieces in this movie. There are a lot of moments in the film where I could see somebody going, yeah, this scene was my favorite in the movie, or this scene, and you could use like 2 words to describe it. My personal favorite sequence in the movie was a zero gravity sequence. You'll know it when you see it, but there are a lot of scenes like that in this movie. Altogether, I thought that this was a really good entry into the Alien series. In all honesty, I'm going to give this movie a higher score than I see a lot of other people giving it. I'm excited to see how people react to this movie, because it gives people a lot, but also does things that I think aren't going to be for everybody. It just so happened that this movie did a lot of things that were for me, and I can't wait to see like what didn't work for other people. That being said, I dug a lot of this movie, and I thought that just overall this was an Alien movie that was just right up my alley. Alien Romulus does a lot right, but does a couple things wrong, and because of that, I'm going to give Alien Romulus a score of 8 out of 10. Have you seen Alien Romulus? If you have, let us know what you thought down below. And hey, speaking of fan service, here's our review for Deadpool and Wolverine. That goes very much into fan service. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.